I feel like a spoiled brat, you know? I mean, can't we all understand that, what's really important is God's view of things? Look through his eyes and see we're one family. You're never going to be okay until you care about your fellow man. That's what we've got to get. That your fellow man's welfare is your welfare, and vice versa. Your happiness is his happiness. His happiness is your happiness. My happiness is your happiness. Your happiness is my happiness. This is something that we have to do together. We cannot do it separately or alone. Okay? It's just an immutable law of the universe. It's like karmic laws. It's like as you sow, so you reap, and there's no way to avoid it. So I could see myself being rich and famous, and I say to myself, how boring is that? So what? I mean, who really cares? You're still human. You're still pitiable. You're living in a body of death. Your life, as we know it in this physical body, could be over today for any of us. So, what kind of state are we in? We're in a miserable state. We're all stuck in this devil's soup. And the least we can do is try to fight our way out. I kind of liken it to trying to pull a weight, not even so much up a hill, but down the hill. Because when you've got truth on your side, you've got the greatest power in the universe on your side. And God is truth. In fact, the Spirit of God, the Holy Spirit of God is called, it's synonymous with the Spirit of truth. And this is what keeps on descending more and more day by day upon the earth. This is what's going to destroy the earth with this fire. It's the fire of the Holy Spirit. It's going to wash through. And all humanity that cannot stand before the glory of the Spirit of truth is going to lose. So again, back to the analogy, is that we're trying to pull this weight down the hill, but the weight is very powerful, and the weight is comprised of these establishmentarians, these people that are trusting in the system. They have faith in the establishment. They're vested in it. They don't want to rock the boat. You know what I mean? They want to push the envelope. They want to make the scale tilt as much as possible in their favor without it capsizing. Because if the whole thing goes over, if they get the checks and balances so out of whack, then they know they too will be destroyed. And there'll be a reset of economic reality. Again, everything comes back to money. So that's what's going on here. And these Ponzi schemes are very precarious because that's exactly where they head. They tend to want to capsize because, they don't know how to, like they talk about quantitative easing. They don't know how to taper it, right? Because, the whole thing's been a charade. So if they do any tapering at all, it becomes more and more evident of the scam and what they've been doing. They've just been printing money. They've been putting the country in debt, not themselves, but they've been putting the poor. It always falls hardest on the poorest through the cost of living. That's how your money is debased, because the cost of living inflates. So your money is worth less. It's as simple as that. Your dollar, your housing dollar, for example, if you just look at that one commodity in the last 50 years, has fallen through the floor. And I could point out incidents where it's gone down as much as 10,000% in purchasing power. 10,000%. Most stuff has stayed pretty close to the same, about 2,000% roughly. But it's like this. If you got one segment that has been so manipulated, like housing, and the prices have been fixed so badly because it's in the interest of the landlords now and all these investors and the homeowners, the innocent homeowners out there that are just happy to see their equity go up. They don't care about market manipulation and price fixing. Hey, they see it's in their, the equation works in their favor, so they're all for it. They get it. They go out and buy a new car. They say, hey, my house went up in value. Jackpot, So this is the situation we've got. So it's very hard to pull this weight down the hill. There's a lot of resistance to it. And but again, you've got truth on your side, so you've got the greatest power on your side when you really are among the righteous, the noble, the benevolent, the altruistic. That really you have a pure heart and mind and spirit, and you want not some of humanity to be free. You get it, and you want all of humanity to be free. And what exactly does that mean? Freedom encapsulates things like security and prosperity. Okay, there's no way any of us can feel liberated until we're not beholden to another. So eventually, the new paradigm, the new age that we come into, has to be one where you let your conscience be your guide, where you serve your fellow man because you are just doing what your conscience dictates to you. Your umbilical cord to the spirit of truth, the spirit of God. That you don't sit around being hedonistic and self-serving and drive your nice automobile, which you can have any automobile you want, live in your nice house. Everybody should be able to have any house they want. All these things. I mean, we can have houses all over the place if we just shared stuff, I'm not saying I'm going to take what's yours. I don't want to take what's yours. And this reminds me now of a subject I wanted to touch on. Last week I mentioned this thing called adverse possession. And I learned this in real estate school. And they didn't go into a lot of depth, but in a nutshell, this is it. It involves a hostile takeover as somebody else's property. Now, private property, public property, they didn't go into depth about that. Basically, it's very nebulous. And what they taught was that if you go in and you take some acreage and you pay taxes, you've got to go down to your tax assessor's office and you've got to go pay taxes, property taxes, for 5 years on this property. And you've got to be able to receive mail at that address where the property is located. So they didn't talk about hiring a surveyor and saying, well, look, I just want to take, 2 or 3 acres here and I don't want to be greedy. I just need a homestead. This is the old-fashioned homestead. This is like a loophole, if you will, and it's kind of a pressure relief valve that people, poor people say to themselves, hey, this planet belongs to me as much as anybody else. I was born on this earth. I've got a right to share in the planet's bounty. Why don't I? And who can disagree? Who out there can say you don't have a right to live? Who can say, oh, this is all bought and sold. That's public property. That's private property. You can't have this, can't have that, can't build your place here, can't build your place there. And if they want to regulate the safety and, say, well, this is okay to build it like this and you need the septic tank here or you can't put one in here and there's a reason why and, makes sense with these environmental impact reports and stuff. I could support a little, that. I mean, I'm all for the environment. I recycle, the most minute things. Probably, I'm as anal as they get about recycling. I don't want to wreck the earth. Who does? I'd be putting water in my gas tank if I could, and I should have a long time ago. Hydrogen is a 16th century technology we've been able to produce hydrogen artificially. So, the idea that we couldn't have miniaturized hydrogen production units under the hood of our cars is a load, okay? And that we couldn't have Tesla technology to replace nuclear and, coal and oil and all this other stuff they're making the energy out of and transmitting it through power lines. Could be all wireless now. Tesla knew electricity was everywhere. We all know. Rub your feet on a carpet. I mean, it's there in the air. You ever touch the handle of your car sometimes and there's electricity more in the air sometimes than others? You get a shock and it's there. And it's just a matter of figuring out how to take it out of the atmosphere, and Tesla figured that out. And you could transmit it through one of those same units, those same mechanisms that he had for, pulling in the electricity and pushing it out. Everybody could have one on their own, domicile. But of course, J.P. Morgan and Westinghouse figured out they couldn't put a meter on it, so they didn't want it. Anyhow, I digress, and I'll go back to this adverse possession. So, you know what? There's really not that much more to this thing. I wouldn't want to do it. You know what I mean? The whole idea kind of rubs me the wrong way. I wouldn't mind homesteading. I'd like the approval of the people, the government. And who's the government? We the people. As we know, now it's just a bunch of bureaucratic politicos, that are just whores to the money printers. That's all we have. I mean, that's self-evident, okay? With the banking takeover of '08 and these politicians knowing the will of the people and just blatantly going against it. We don't have either a republic or a democracy. A republic is supposed to support the individual's point of view. I mean, in my mind, a true republic, a purist one, would be one where what we don't hang the guy high, because there's any chance that we're wrong. We got the wrong guy. If you catch somebody red-handed and they lynch a guy, I'm talking about capital punishment now, then that's one thing. If he's been caught in the act, that's not to me capital punishment. But capital punishment is first-degree murder in my mind because it's very premeditated on the part of society. So what I'm talking about is, that in a purist republic, you'd say no. Only one guy in town says that he wants to show more mercy than the others. Then he's the one that gets his way because he's representative of the highest ideals. And so that's what and a democracy is more of the mob mentality. But I mean, what are you going to have? I've heard this analogy of democracy is two wolves and a sheep deciding on what's for dinner. Well, there's also the view you could say, well, you're depriving the wolves of their dinner, if you don't support the democracy. So there's a lot of ways to look at this stuff, and mainly we have to understand that our interests are common, and that we've all got to just get that fundamentally, is that I cannot think any more highly of myself. I'm not talking about narcissism or ego. I'm talking about just the cosmic relationship we have with God, understanding it is written that we are created in God's image and likeness. Each one of us is God's precious treasure. And what does he want from us? What does he expect? Good and loyal friends with a pure heart that want justice to prevail on earth, that want equality. When people ask me what religion I am, from now on, I'm not going to say Christian. You know what I'm going to say? Egalitarian, because I think there's so few people that really understand that word. But what is egalitarianism? It's equality. It's just understanding that, look, if I'm walking around in a world where people think so little of themselves, and I see it all the time, I sense it in my heart and my soul, that people feel like brute beasts. They feel unwanted. They go to a job that they know they can be replaced at like that. They're always walking on thin ice, on eggshells with their employer, and they're already being subjugated and cheated out of a fair pay, living wage. And it breaks my heart. And I see it everywhere. And people they get in this mode, this beaten down mode where, they just buy into it. Yeah, I guess I was just born to serve the system and, eat my meals, be grateful I have what I have. And, I'm all for being grateful. Don't get me wrong, but, I'm for people thinking a lot of themselves, because I can only think as much of myself as that person I'm meeting, and vice versa, is that they can only think as highly of me as they think of themselves. And that's what I see all the time in society. And I hear other people talking like this too. Among them, I've heard Alex Jones talk about this. How people, even though they know that he's, quite famous worldwide, but, they'll meet him somewhere in a restaurant or something, and in a store, and, maybe at the airport, they'll want to frisk him. This kind of thing goes on all the time. I've heard Jesse Ventura talk about it. I think Ron Paul gets harassed. And, these are very famous people everybody knows. And still you got these minions of the system, these small-minded, brute beast type people that think so little of themselves, but still, their little power trip is harassing people that they know are upright. And it's shameful. So, I'm not a famous person, but I get that same vibe when I see people that I could think is, I could be walking with the Spirit of God and feeling good and joyful and free and happy and at peace with humanity, because, I really like that. I like the idea that I know people hate me, not for good cause, but, I just don't want them to detest me. So when I rail on these hypocrites at the top, like Jesus did, which is what we need to do, which is what we all need to do, but I don't want them to detest me. I want them to understand, look, I'm your friend. I'm the guy telling you to jump ship. I don't know if you've gone too far. That's between you and God. All I could tell you is show your fruits. Show that you really give a damn about, humanity and being on the right side of history. Do the right thing. Judge correctly. And show the world by your fruits that they're pure, that you're on the side of humanity, not inhumanity. Because we know there's a lot of you evil rascals out there. We know about the Georgia Guidestones. We know about eugenics programs. We know about the genocidal maniacs that have always been present on the earth. And some of them have gotten very far. And it's very shameful, and this is a matter of fact. And this same element, this same spirit of genocidal maniacism, it still exists.